Hello and welcome back to the channel.
The English couple.
Yes, now today, something very different, not what we were actually going to do at all, but there was this terrible tragedy, you probably heard about it in the news, of a number of children in Birmingham who fell into an iced lake. They were playing at the edge of an ice lake. Dreadful tragedy, horrendous, and one of the kids who didn't know the others, a boy of about 10, ran to help them, and he also succumbed.
Consequently died.
And as far as I know, there is a 6-year-old in intensive care. I'm not sure whether he or she has survived or not. I don't know, but it's in the papers. It's very harrowing. And I just thought it's a subject that obviously people are talking about at the moment because they'll be thinking about their children or their grandchildren or other people's children they know, and what it must be like to have that. Or there'll be other people out there who've had something tragic happen.
Yeah.
So I just thought it would be an interesting subject, a hard subject, difficult subject to talk about. I mean, we like to do sort of light-hearted and fun things.
Generally, yes.
We're both parents.
Yes, that's right.
Both from different partners, and we have children. Mine are much older, and yours are of the similar age now.
Yes, exactly. My eldest is of the age that most of these children were. And it does make me wonder, what would he do in this situation if he found himself in that situation? Either, the lads who fell in originally, or one of the friends that went to help, or the stranger kid who went to help him.
Yes.
An adult might think, oh, it's a dangerous thing. If I just jump in there, I'm not going to be able to help anything. Yeah. So that makes me wonder whether I need to be having more conversations with him. My child, and what would you do if?
Yes.
And have these kind of conversations with him, because where we don't have ice or ice lakes very often, I think there's not enough knowledge of or danger sensation for a child when they see it or are near it. They don't sense that danger. Whereas I suppose a child who lived in a country that was spent a lot of time under ice and snow, they would instinctively know, wouldn't they?
Yes, I suppose it's like roads, isn't it? Kids learn very quickly not to run out into the road, and you don't get as many road deaths as perhaps you used to get when it was more of a novelty.
Yeah.
And as you say, we don't have snow that often, and over the last, 10 years, we've had quite mild winters.
Yes, I mean, I must admit, in my 40 years, I've not seen a lot of snow. Admittedly, for the first chunk of my childhood, I was in the Middle East, where I definitely didn't see any snow. But that was when there were some of the heaviest snows during my lifetime. So I missed those. But
in my childhood, we had snow, we had ice. And I do remember there was a couple of ponds near where I lived that would ice over.
Yeah.
And you would throw the stones, as kids, you'd throw the stones on to see how secure it is. And you would. Kids are kids, aren't they? You're not an experienced person. You're young, you're whatever age you are, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is. You've had such limited experience of life. And you're seeing the ice, and it's, you're being dared by your mates. Go on, you could walk on it. No, I don't know that I can. And, you're putting your feet gingerly on it, and then for a moment, no, it seems all right. And then suddenly it breaks, and you go through, and, on those occasions that it happened to me, when I was with my mate, we were quite nervous about it. I don't know whether that was instinctive or whatever, or we were very lucky. We didn't walk out into the lake very far, and of course so much depends on the lake, whether the lake goes very gradually down and deeper, or whether it's a sudden drop anyway that you're unaware of.
Yeah, quite. But, I mean, I suppose it's different if you actually use that lake in the summer.
If you know the lake.
Exactly, if you know the lake, it's slightly different. But
of course, the cold, the hypothermia.
I mean, it all sets in really quickly.
Yes. It's a terrible thing. So I thought if we move away from that specific subject, because it's obviously raw.
It's just speculation if we just...
Yeah, we don't know the situation of that. But tragedy in your children. I remember we had a girl. I won't mention the name and stuff, but we had a girl who disappeared by somebody had pinched her, and later on she was found dead. But I do remember there were these call-outs on the news to check your shed, to check, in case the girl had just run away. You sort of always knew at the back of your head something probably nasty.
Sinister had happened.
And it was very difficult. But I did check the sheds here, and it really brought it home when you get these people being talked about in the news much more, the sort of danger environment that there is. Now that's a malicious one, and fortunately they are very rare. But tragedy can happen from kids falling out of trees.
That's right.
I mean, I used to play in sort of quarries and car dumps. You'd go running off. There was no reins to hold you. Where I lived, there was a derelict farm. We used to climb up onto the farm, onto the farm buildings, and jump off them and muck about. And nobody gave us a second thought, thank goodness. And so my childhood was full of adventure. And occasionally you'd come back and you'd sprained your wrist, that sort of thing. How about you?
Well, I predominantly grew up in Saudi Arabia, so we were living in a compound of other expatriates, all sorts of, it was a melting pot, literally, of all the different cultures living within there. And although I can't remember if it was entirely enclosed by a wall, but it was walled, and there was security and guns in those security hands, things like that. So we were kept separate to the outside world.
So you couldn't go running off and clamber up trees in old buildings.
But I had enough freedom in my third year of life to go and find spot a little kitten, a stray kitten, or a feral kitten. I followed it between some flower beds, found a shaky box in the dark that rattled like Tic Tacs, tried a few, went back and told my mum of my adventure. Oh my God, you've eaten rat poison.
Oh gosh, yes. So that's the thing with children, isn't it? Very young children putting stuff into their mouth, pills and things. And tragedies like that must happen all the time. And I guess if you work in a hospital, and you may have seen this sort of thing where kids have eaten the wrong things or drunk out of bottles.
Crab apples.
Crab apples.
Yeah, did that the same year as well.
That had a bad reaction, did it?
Oh, yeah.
Hospital
again.
Oh, hospital
Have
again.
some more milk and magnesia.
Get it all pumped out. Yes, it is a terrible thing, and I cannot imagine what it must be like to lose a child, because no parent wants their child to go before them.
No, absolutely not. It's just
instinctive.
you don't expect it, not in this day and age especially. It used to be a much more common thing just 50, 100 years ago.
Yes.
So, you had to have as many kids as possible so that you ensured some of them reached adulthood, or at least one.
Exactly, absolutely. But what do you do with children if you say, the snow is there, there's a lake, or you go up to a derelict farm or wherever it is? Can you rein them in? What kind of childhood are you giving children if you're permanently fearful that they are actually going to fall out of a tree?
Sounds like my life every day with Joseph.
Exactly.
To be honest, I was just thinking to myself, well, it was a difficult year for my mum and dad when I was 3, because there was those 2 incidents with the crab apples and the rat poison, but there was also alcohol, because we were living in Saudi. They homebrew.
Yes.
And
who was home brewing?
My parents.
Oh, right.
Well,
I thought you
everyone.
meant the Saudis.
Everyone. The Westerners in the compound would brew their own, and it was a New Year's Eve party.
Is that because they couldn't buy them?
Yeah, you can't buy it out there.
You can't buy it.
In Saudi, it's illegal.
And did they let you buy it? Did they let you homebrew it?
No.
No, so
you
that was all
under the radar.
Oh, okay.
You had to be hush.
So it's probably still going on then.
Probably. But as long as no one causes any trouble with it. 'Cause,
Right.
everyone knows that the Brits are quite well known for, or at least the English, for being rowdy and drunk when abroad and stuff like that.
So you might go out, not the children specifically, but the adults might be rolling around drunk as they visit one another in the compound, but that's fine because it's enclosed.
Yeah, they would only be within their own homes and, within
Right.
parties and stuff, so. But anyways, this particular New Year's Eve, they'd put those American fridges with the big tanks with the tap on the front.
What, for cold water?
For cold water and ice,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
juice and stuff. My mum and dad used to put juice in there, and I'd help myself to it if I was thirsty. They put the alcohol, the punch in there this night, and I helped myself to it, didn't I?
And you didn't know?
No, I didn't know. Mum came in the morning to check on me, and
Yeah.
I've got snakes in my head, Mummy.
Well, that's very irresponsible of your parents, if I may say so. That, at least they were not telling the children that where you normally get water, cold water,
I suppose
we've put punch.
I suppose I don't usually get up in the night to, wouldn't normally have, but I did
No.
that particular night. I don't know, I can't remember, so maybe I'd actually seen what was happening,
Right.
seen that my mum was doing it, and she'd probably told me not to.
Yes, but you hadn't taken it in, didn't
No.
register. I mean, these things don't always register with children, do
No,
they?
because I mean, there's so much going on, and you're thinking about all sorts of other things, I suppose.
Yes. So, but I mean, things like bleach and other cleaning fluids that are on the shelves. Fortunately, we have the caps that hopefully you can't open if you're a child.
It doesn't stop some kids.
I was going to say, kids are very persistent, aren't
Yes.
they? They have one-track minds. They're not adults that can reason in the same way
Rationalise.
that we have with experience. Going back to my childhood, I remember on this derelict farm, we used to hunt around and look for things, and one day we dug up an unexploded grenade.
Yikes.
Now, whether this grenade, or quite what it was doing on this farm in Sussex, all on its own, I don't know. There was various other bits and pieces, but not military ordnance. But anyway, we got this thing and we were looking at it, and we thought, oh, it's a grenade. We'll throw it at walls and see if it explodes, having no notion of how far any shrapnel would go.
No notion of the consequences of what that would be.
Yes, so we got behind, I can't remember now, some sort of barrier, like a low wall or a hay bale.
At least you had some sense.
Yes, and then...
Just a little.
At first we were poking it with a stick. And then eventually we thought, this is, it looked rusty and it looked like it could go off. So eventually I think my friend Peter was the first to do this, and we lobbed it and we both ducked down like this, waiting for this explosion, which we thought would be hilarious. Of course, it would have brought out all the parents from the locality to think, what the hell is going on? And it didn't. In the end, we did have the presence of mind. I must have been younger than 10 because I went back home and told my dad. And my dad left home, my parents had split up around about that time when I was 10. So I had to have been about 9, very irresponsible 9-year-old. And my dad rang the police, and as a consequence, the bomb disposal unit came out. And they looked at it and they went, oh, yes, very dangerous. They packed it with PE, plastic explosives, called us back behind a barrier, safe distance, did the whole, and blew it up. And it was, I don't think it actually, in retrospect now, I don't think it was live or that dangerous. It should have been cleared away, clearly.
Yeah.
But I think they blew it up, because they enjoy doing that sort of thing.
Because it was fun.
Because it was fun and it's their job. But also, and it's one way of disposing of it.
It was controlled explosion, so
safe
enough.
environment. But it taught us as well not to pick up things which potentially could be lethal.
Yeah.
And
Take out a neighbourhood.
Exactly. But who knows what could have happened to me if that was not as benign as it apparently seemed.
Yeah, we might not be sitting here today.
Exactly. And I'm sure that many people out watching this will have stories of potential tragedy that didn't happen, there by the grace of God or whatever has happened. But I cannot... here's another thing. When we moved into this house and we had 3 children, one of the things I would constantly make my kids aware of, if the house caught fire, how to get out.
Yeah.
Because you hear of these terrible stories of children trapped in a house that's on fire. And I would tell each kid which window to get out, and in order of preference.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was one window which was a sheer drop, so it was a question of getting the bed mattress out, getting the duvet out and jumping onto that, getting onto the windowsill and lowering
dropping yourself down slowly.
To the lowest
Gently.
bit. but there was an order of sequence, and I think my wife used to think at the time that I was a bit mad because I did perhaps over-focus on this, but I wanted to drum in the kids that if things went badly...
That they could take care of themselves in that way.
Yeah.
And that you could relax a little bit about it.
Do you ever have those conversations with yours?
I do, yes. It's a little bit trickier with Joseph, where he's only 3.
Yes.
And if I tell him to, if there's a fire, climb out the window, he'll be like, there's a fire, pretending, and then climb out the window.
Of course, you've got to be careful with
he's still learning a lot of consequence thing.
Yeah.
At the minute.
Absolutely. It was. I don't know.
That being said, in the summer when we have little paddling pools out, even with just that little bit of water, you've got to be so careful, don't you? Because so much can go wrong with that. And there's a pond. It's now a raised pond at my mum and dad's. So that's another thing.
We again, a tragedy that happened, and I don't know how the parents coped. I mean, so far my children have been okay, and I've been. Touch wood, you can't see it, there's a wooden table there. We had friends, our children were about 5 or 6 at the time, and our friends had a daughter, and she was very young, only just crawling, and the husband was putting up a fence, and he was busy putting up the fence, and she was crawling around in the garden, and he was constantly looking. No blame could be given to him, but they had a pond. And you've already guessed, haven't you? He was putting up a panel like this, and the next minute he turns around just to make sure she was all right, and she'd fallen in the pond and drowned. And it affected everybody that knew them, because they were so pleased with their little baby.
Just doesn't bear thinking about.
No, it's heartbreaking, and anybody who's lost a child for any reason, whether it's just a birth deficiency. Or anything. I mean, my son Billy had a brain hemorrhage at 18, and we thought he was going to die, and we went, or he was going to end up as a vegetable. That was the prognosis, that he was most likely going to have severe brain damage because he had a hemorrhage in his skull, and that was dreadful. At 18, and you're thinking, I would swap my life for him, because at that point I was. Well, I suppose I was, how long ago was that? It was about 10 years ago, so I was about sort of just coming up to it was on my 50th birthday, I remember it. It was the night after my 50th birthday, he had this brain hemorrhage. And we thought we'd lost him. And I cannot tell you the emotions that go through you when you think you have actually, you're going to be told that he is either dead, because we were placed in a room at the hospital, or that he was going to be a vegetable for the rest of his life. And I'm pleased to say that he's not, and he's perfectly fine. And they did, the NHS, I know they're in a terrible situation. And
they did a marvellous job of saving his life.
Yeah, they did
and
amazing.
Ensuring his safety in future.
But there was a year afterwards, after the hemorrhage, that was touch and go before he could have the major surgery. And again, so we had this wait, because at any moment in this waiting time,
it could pop again.
He could have had another hemorrhage and died. So somebody had to be with him at all times. He couldn't go to the bathroom and lock the door. So it was very worrying. And so I know, you've been on the edge of tragedy or potential tragedy, and I think most people have sort of lived that or know somebody who's like that. And if you don't have children, you just have no idea of the emotions that go through. I mean, you may have parents and that will die or have accidents or car accidents. I mean, there's so many ways that it's amazing that most of us get through fairly unscathed. And that's not even the mental stress that people go through, children with mental illnesses that you can't see. And then you hear about children who feel they've been bullied, and they've taken their own lives, or they self-harm, which is equally a tragedy.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you do? And how do you deal with that?
I don't know. And people are suffering, and they do this all the time. So sorry that this one has been...
Bit of a doom and gloom in a way.
Bit of a doom and gloom, but it is a reality, and people have to face these things, don't they? But you've got to somehow put the bravest face on all of this, and you've just got to keep going. You've got to, you know, pull your socks up somehow, no matter how terrible it is, because if you don't take it up, the only other way is down.
Exactly. I heard of there was a family, well, a mother and father who had lost all 3 of their children and one of their fathers, who was on the plane with 3 children in one fell swoop of the plane. I can't remember why the plane crashed, but...
Well, this is it. Car accidents, plane crashes.
I mean, how do you do that? You lose all your children in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
And a parent.
Yeah. It's just heartbreaking.
But they were absolutely amazing in, you know, coping. Obviously, they struggled for a while and, you know, and still struggle probably now.
Yes.
But they've, you know, they've actually had some more children. Thankfully, they were young enough to be able to have some more children.
Yes.
And remember the older children to the youngers. And
yes, you're not replacing the children
no,
by doing that, of course.
No. But it was one of their coping mechanisms of dealing with the loss.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I hope we haven't
depressed you
too much. But because that story was in the papers and because of the snow, and you know that there'll be other stories that are going unrecorded. That's the sad thing, you know. Children will be slipping under or getting knocked down by a car that somebody's put their brakes on too early because they don't know how to drive on ice. So there'll be so many other tragedies, and then one story kind of caps it all. That I just felt that it was. You know, not so much about them, but about the general thing of children, particularly, and when tragedy happens, and it's heartbreaking. But our next video, whatever that will be, do join us.
Will be cheery.
Yes,
we can promise that much.
We will be as cheery as we can. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe if this has been interesting and you want to hear more of this. Do tell us about it. Tell us your stories. We'd love to read the comments. It would be interesting. Just to reassure us that we're doing the right thing on the channel. So anyway, keep warm in the winter if you're watching this as we make them. Do keep warm, because in the UK it's blooming freezing. We may look like we're quite warm, but luckily the log burner is on, but outside...
The weather outside is frightful.
Frightful. Till next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.